What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. I hope you all had a fantastic week. Welcome back to the channel for another episode of the Ask Me Anything series. As always, I want to thank each and every one of you who took the time to come up with a question and leave it on the post. Even the questions that don't get featured in the video, just know I read every single one and I appreciate all of you guys. If this is your first time checking out the channel, then be sure to hit that subscribe button. We are aiming for 100,000 subs by next summer. We got a long way to go, so every subscription counts. With that all being said, though, let's go ahead and get this episode started with the first question from Kevin Jennings, who says, what team do you think has had the weakest offseason so far? And also really appreciate the support. Glad you like the videos. This is sort of a tough question. You kind of have to define what you mean by weakest, because there is a lot of teams that got worse, but that was by design. So I don't necessarily classify that as a weak offseason if you're picking a direction and then starting to build towards that. For an example, the Philadelphia Flyers. Has the roster on paper gotten worse over the offseason? I think it's safe to say, but I like what Danny Briere has done so far because the Flyers finally have some direction. That's something you couldn't say about the team for a long time. But for a team that is trying to get better, a team that has playoff aspirations next season, I feel like the New York Islanders have had a pretty weak offseason. It was heavily rumored that they were in on Alex DeBrincat, missed out on him, and for the most part, it looks like they're going to be running it back next season with pretty much the same team. They re-signed guys like Pierre Engvall and Scott Mayfield to 7-year extensions. They brought back Varlamov, extended Sorokin to a contract that I actually like for them, but based off of how last season went for the Islanders, how the team looked and performed, I'm not sure how smart of a decision is to, pretty much run it back with the same team. There is obviously still lots of time left in the offseason for the Islanders to go out and make some changes, try to improve the team, but based on what we've seen so far, I feel like they have had a pretty weak offseason. The next question we have comes from a 12 Lego 25, who says, there have been a bunch of rumors of Karlsson returning to the East. In that case, which team would most likely trade for Karlsson? Also appreciate the support. In my opinion, the Pittsburgh Penguins definitely make the most sense. Crosby's 35 now, Malkin and Letang are 36. Based on what we've seen from those three this past season, they still have a lot left in the tank. Why not try to add the reigning Norris Trophy winner Erik Karlsson to that core? I love the idea of Kyle Dubas taking a massive swing for the fences to try and put this team in the best position possible to go on a couple more deep playoff runs before their championship window closes. Now, the Penguins really don't have any cap space, but they have contracts on the team as to where they could send back to San Jose to kind of even out the money. One thing that I've seen proposed a lot is Mikael Granlund and Jeff Petrie. Those two together would be a combined cap hit of $11.25 million. Now, those two together almost cancel out Karlsson's $11.5 million cap hit. I'm sure the Penguins would still want San Jose to retain a little bit of salary on Karlsson's deal, but the San Jose Sharks have made it pretty clear they have no interest on retaining like 50%, and you probably wouldn't have to if you're taking back contracts like Petrie and like Granlund. So a package of those two, a first-round draft pick, and maybe a prospect or some additional draft picks, I think that could work. And for the Sharks, you get guys like Petrie and Granlund who only have 2 years left on their deals. Those are guys that maybe a year or so down the line you could flip for additional assets. I really don't think any other team in the league makes as much sense as the Penguins and could make it work as easy as the Penguins could when it comes to an Erik Karlsson trade. So that's where I think he's going to end up. The next question we have comes from Matt Mason, who says, assuming each division in 2024 has one team miss the postseason that made the playoffs in 23 and one team make it that didn't, name those teams. And also, I appreciate the support. Let's start in the Atlantic Division. For a team that might miss next season that just made it, I mean, it's crazy to say considering they just had such a historic regular season, but I feel like the most obvious answer would be Boston. I think it really just comes down to the future of Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci. Obviously, still both of those guys are UFAs, haven't made a decision on their future just yet, but if both of those guys leave, that leaves two pretty massive holes down the middle for the Boston Bruins. That would mean their number one center would be Charlie Coyle. Obviously, Taylor Hall is gone now as well. Not like he was a game breaker for them, but a very solid complementary top six winger. They lost Bertuzzi and Orlov in free agency. Hathaway left as well. As far as who could replace them, I feel like Buffalo is the closest amongst like that kind of group of them, the Red Wings and the Senators. So I'll go with the Buffalo Sabres. Have my questions about their goaltending, but if Devin Levi is the truth and he has a strong season next year, I could see them making some noise. So I'll go with Buffalo. Next, we have the Metro Division. I can't see New Jersey, Carolina, or the Rangers falling out of the playoffs yet, so I guess it has to be the Islanders. And as far as who could replace them, I mean, Pittsburgh maybe. I don't see it being, Washington, Philly, or Columbus, so I guess it would have to be Pittsburgh. Although when it comes to the Metro Division, honestly wouldn't be surprised if next season we see the same 4 playoff teams, Carolina, Rangers, Devils, and Islanders. For the Central Division, I guess I'll go with the Winnipeg Jets, even though I think their roster right now is still pretty good, but in all likelihood, they're going to move, at least one of Scheifele or Hellebuck before next season begins, or maybe even both. I don't think the Jets are going to be terrible, but I just feel like they're the most likely of, Colorado, Dallas, and Minnesota to miss the playoffs next season. And for who could replace them, honestly, I'm going to go with the St. Louis Blues. I could see them having a bounce back season. I could see Nashville being in the hunt again as well, although I am a little bit confused by their direction, deciding to, buy out Matt Duchene, get rid of Johansson, and then bring in O'Reilly, Nyquist, and some win-now players, Luke Shen as well. So I'm interested to see what kind of season they have. And lastly, we have the Pacific, and I feel like this is the toughest one to pick one of these teams to miss the playoffs. You have Vegas, Edmonton, LA, and Seattle. I guess the pick would have to be the Kraken. I mean, maybe we see a little bit of regression from them. Obviously, they had a lot of guys, that I feel like had some unsustainably good seasons last year. They lost a little bit of depth in free agency, but again, this is a team that I wouldn't be surprised if they get better either, so I don't really know. I guess it'd have to be Seattle. And as far as who could replace them, I feel like the only answer is Calgary. I can't see it being Anaheim, San Jose. I mean, maybe Vancouver if Thatcher Demko can get back to playing at an elite level, but I feel like they're more of a long shot than Calgary. The next question we have comes from Ben Reeve, who says, assuming they go this route, when do you anticipate one of the core 4 of the Leafs to be moved? As a diehard fan, I can't get behind running it back again. On the contrary, and also really appreciate the support. At this point, I would not be surprised whatsoever. I feel like it's honestly more likely that we see them bring back all of the core 4 next season than see one of them traded. If one of them is going to be traded, I feel like it'll be Nylander, just because there's already been reports that the contract negotiations between the Leafs and Nylander haven't gone well at all. Nylander wants to be, a $10 million plus player, and if you're the Leafs, I feel like that's just something you can't do. You can't pay Nylander that kind of money. It just doesn't make sense to have 4 forwards on your team with a cap hit of 10 mil plus. How do you expect to build a competitive team around those guys? So if there isn't any positive progression between the Leafs and Nylander in regards to an extension, I think he'll probably be the one to be moved. Nylander is way too good of a player for the Leafs to lose for nothing in free agency. This next question comes from Ninja TV, who says, thoughts on the KHL's new rule against D-men stalling for line changes behind the net for more than 3 seconds. Should that be implemented out west? I'll be honest, I had absolutely no idea they implemented this rule. What would the penalty be? Like, you get a 2-minute delay of game penalty if you're back there holding the puck for more than 3 seconds. I did hear of another new rule they made where starting next season, the team that has a power play heading into a new period or overtime, instead of the faceoff being at center ice to start that period, the team on the power play gets the faceoff in the offensive zone. After a quick little Google search, I just found the rule that you were referring to as well. Players are prohibited from holding the puck for more than 3 seconds in the trapezoid area behind their own net. If it's the first violation, the play is stopped and a warning is given with the faceoff in the offending team's defensive zone, and then subsequent violations will result in a minor penalty. So that's pretty crazy. Definitely some interesting new rules. It's pretty obvious that their goal here is probably to pick up the pace of play a little bit, get some more offense, which, to be honest, I wouldn't be against, the NHL maybe implementing something like that. We'll see how it goes, in the first year of the KHL. Maybe the NHL can keep an eye on how things go over there, but yeah, I guess I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'm always, up for change as long as it's not something drastic. I know there's probably a lot of old school fans that would just hate this and, want to stay far away from something like this, but I don't think either of these rule changes would ruin the game or really change things all that much, to be honest. It's something that I feel like we'd probably get used to pretty quickly. Moving along now, this next question comes from Stacy, who says, which 2023 drafted prospects make their NHL rosters? And also really appreciate the support. Thanks for sticking around as long as you have. Of course, Bedard is an obvious one, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we see all of the top 3, Bedard, Karlsson, and Fantilli, make their NHL rosters this season. Outside of those guys, maybe a bit of a dark horse pick. Wouldn't be surprised if David Reinbacher makes the Canadiens. He's got an NHL ready body. He's a smart player, already plays a responsible 200-foot game. The Montreal Canadiens have a pretty weak blue line, so don't be surprised to see him make a strong push for the team out of training camp. This next question comes from Tranquillo, who says, as a Red Wings fan, I'm curious, why are there so many one-year contracts this offseason? Isn't that counterproductive to building a nucleus to work with? I don't really think so. I feel like they already have their nucleus, which is Dylan Larkin. I feel like he can throw DeBrincat in there now as well. Maybe Comfort too, because he got a 5-year deal, and then obviously Sider, Raymond, and then Danielson, Casper, Edvinson, and those guys. Right now, I feel like the 1-year deals are kind of just placeholders, guys that are, competitive NHLers that can fill up roster spots so that the young guys guys have to actually work to make the team. You're not just given roster spots. I feel like players' growth can be pretty stunted that way. So that's where I'm at with the 1-year deals. Obviously, the players they bring in are going to help them be more competitive, and it, gives the Red Wings some internal competition, which is always a good thing. And depending on how the season goes, if the Red Wings, have a disappointing year and aren't as far along in the rebuild that maybe us Red Wings fans would like, the 1-year deals are easy to ship out at the trade deadline for prospects, draft picks, additional future assets. Next up, this question comes from Gibby, who says, with the NBA introducing an in-season tournament, do you think the NHL will follow suit? Probably not. As an NBA fan, I'm not even really sure how I feel about that in-season tournament. Like, the prizes you win are just money. I think it's like $500,000 to each player off the winning team or something like that. These NBA players make a ton of money. I really don't think many of them are going to care to go out there and give it their all to, win an in-season tournament and win that kind of money, which is really just chump change to most of those guys. The guys at the end of the bench, though, guys on rookie deals, 1-year deals, stuff like that. I mean, I'm sure they'd love to win that $500,000. But like your LeBron Jameses, your Kevin Durant's of the league, the best players in the league, I feel like aren't going to take it too seriously. When it comes to the NHL, I really don't care for an in-season tournament, especially just give us a World Cup of hockey at least, every 4 years or something like that, and we will be happy. This next question from Lemon's Funny, kind of a, addition to the previous question. I saw a post earlier about this. Do you think the NHL should take some things from other sports, such as contract restructuring, summer league, play-in series, increased wildcard chance? I'm a massive fan of the play-in series. I think it's worked really well in the NBA, adds some drama to the end of the season, and also it gives teams incentive to not tank and try and be more competitive, because if you're the 10 seed, you could still get into the playoffs if you win the play-in tournament. We know how Gary Bettman feels about tanking, so I feel like this would honestly be at least worth experimenting with for the NHL. Also love the idea of a summer league to showcase prospects. I know there's like prospect tournaments and stuff like that, but it's usually just with a couple of teams, and they're hard to watch. You have to watch like a live stream on the team's Facebook page or something like that. You can't see them on TV really. So I think a summer league with, every team's prospects and every team in the league competes and like there's a trophy at the end, I feel like that would be a lot of fun. The NBA summer league has had some awesome moments over its years. Next up, this question comes from Shizlor, who says, thoughts on the potential Drouin and MacKinnon duo? I was really happy when I saw Jonathan Drouin sign with the Avalanche, reuniting him and MacKinnon. Those two absolutely dominated together for the Halifax Mooseheads in junior. As somebody from Halifax, watching those guys play for the Mooseheads while I was growing up, I'm rooting for Jonathan Drouin. I really want him to still kind of make something of his career at this point. This is probably one of his last chances. Like, if this 1-year deal with the Avalanche doesn't work out, then I could see a scenario where he's out of the league next season. Really hoping he has a good training camp in preseason, makes the Avalanche, and can be at least, a productive middle six player for them. I don't see a scenario where he plays on a line with MacKinnon. I mean, that's kind of far-fetched, but if it does happen, I'll be tuning in, that's for sure. Imagine if they do put them together, though, and they can kind of recreate that magic. Their chemistry picks up where they left off, and then you have a top-line winger for basically league minimum. That would be pretty sick for the Avalanche. Moving along now, this next question comes from Aiden Plays, who says, Alex DeBrincat over under 42.5 goals. Give me the under 1,000%. That would be a career high for DeBrincat. He scored 41 in a season twice. Even with the addition of DeBrincat, I feel like the Red Wings will probably still be a little bit offensively challenged, maybe be like mediocre to middle of the pack in terms of offense. So I don't see him putting up a career high his first season in Detroit. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm going to keep my expectations in check. I'll be happy with, 35 goals. Next up, this question comes from Contrail YT, who says, do you actually play hockey or other sports? If so, what position do you play? So growing up my whole life, I played hockey. I was always a winger. In high school, my sophomore year, which, for Canadians, I'm not sure if you call it sophomore, junior, all that stuff. So it was grade 11, basically. And I played on the football team, the basketball team, and the hockey team, which was just way too much. I absolutely hated playing football. That was the only year I played football. I was a linebacker for that 1 year I played. Basketball, though, really enjoyed almost, as much as I enjoyed playing hockey. Still play pickup basketball and stuff with a lot of the guys I played with in high school, but don't play in any leagues or nothing like that anymore. The only sport I'm actually playing like in a league right now is softball, which is, a lot of fun to play in the summer. If you're not sure what that is, it's basically, baseball, but it's lob pitch. It's not whip pitch. It's pretty laid back. It's a lot of fun. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now and what I've done in my life when it comes to sports. Moving on now, this next question comes from Habs Fan Highlights, who says, favorite hockey movie. This might be a little bit of a hot take, but I feel like there isn't, a ton of great hockey movies. I feel like there's actually more bad ones than there are good ones. The one that really sticks out, though, the one I've always enjoyed through my childhood, is the Mighty Ducks series. Obviously, that's, a pretty easy answer. I'm sure a lot of people would have the same answer, but I mean, it's a legendary series. Also, didn't mind the Goon movies either. I thought those were pretty fun. And now for the final question of this week's episode. This one comes from, you can see the name there. Not even going to try to pronounce it because I'm just going to butcher it, but the question is, with all the moves that Nashville has been making and the trade rumors that Yaroslav Askarov is on the trade block, do you think they are now contenders for the Cup? If not, wouldn't it be more wise to trade Saros, who is in his prime, and keep Askarov, who's younger, and give him more experience for the future? So yeah, like I said earlier in the video, I'm kind of confused right now by the direction the Nashville Predators are heading, after they decided to move on from Mattias Ekholm at, the most recent trade deadline, Granlund, as well as another guy that they moved on from. Obviously, this offseason, Johansson went to Colorado. They bought out Matt Duchene. I thought they were going to be rebuilding, which, I kind of thought would be a smart decision for the Nashville Predators to make because they've kind of been stuck in like mediocrity over the past 3-4 seasons. But then they went out and got guys like Gustav Nyquist, Ryan O'Reilly, Luke Schenn, and I feel like now their goals to kind of stay competitive. So I really don't know what the plan is in Nashville. I don't think they're Stanley Cup contenders with their current roster at all. So that is going to wrap up this week's episode of the Ask Me Anything series. Again, like I said at the beginning, huge thank you to every single one of you who took the time to come up with the question and leave it on the post. I appreciate all you guys so much. You make this series so much fun for me to do. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see another episode in the next week or two, then be sure to leave this video a like. That's the best way to show your support. And lastly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this all summer long, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all soon.